So the PFL's back. It's going to be on a Wednesday this week. It's really weird. I don't know why the PFL is doing a card on a Wednesday, but it is what it is. PFL 9, it is the third playoff card. You've got in the playoffs the welterweights and the lightweights. So obviously in the lightweight division, we've got Clay Collard taking on Shane Burgos in the main event. Then also we have got Aubin-Mercier, the reigning champion, taking on Bruno Miranda. In the welterweight division, we do have the reigning champion back in that weight class. That will of course be the Swedish fighter in Sadabusi. He's going to be taking on Carl Leal in a rematch of last year's semifinal fight. And then you've got Magomedkerimov taking on Solomon Renfro, originally supposed to be Magomedkerimov versus Magomed Umlatov. However, Umlatov unfortunately withdrew from that fight, in a fight that I was really excited about. Now Solomon Renfro comes in and he takes that fight. So that's going to be your four main fights in this 10-fight card. We will get through these first 6 pretty quickly. And also, folks, if you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. We posted our UFC Fight Night Singapore predictions yesterday with Max Holloway and the Korean Zombie in the main event. So go check that video out. Link will be down in the description down below. Okay, so let's get through these fights pretty quickly because again, these are fights that really don't mean all that much. Like a fight like this, you got John Caldone taking on Nathaniel Grimard here. We're going to be taking, I'll get the pick out the way pretty quickly. We're going to be taking John Caldone to win this fight by decision. This is a guy who's now 4-1, 5 fights in Ring of Combat. If you're not familiar with the Ring of Combat promotion, this is a promotion that has held fighters in the New York area such as Chris Weidman, Uriah Hall, Ralphie Stotts, Merab Dvalishvili. A lot of the Sarah Longo guys will come through Ring of Combat. However, for Caldone, not a Sarah Longo guy, fights out of Long Island MMA. It's going to be Chris Wade's gym, along with, I believe, Gregor Gillespie's there, Brian Kelleher's. It's that gym. But Caldone, 4-1 in that promotion. For Nathaniel Grimard, his opponent, he lost to a guy 3 fights ago by knee bar, to a guy who was 2-10 at the time, and Darren Gibbs. Gibbs is now 4-13. That's all I need to see. Caldone's going to win this fight, and he will get it done pretty dominantly. I think he'll get it done on the feet and on the ground. He's going to win this fight by unanimous decision. Our next fight will come here. It's going to be Abdullah Al-Qahtani taking on David Zelner here. We're going to be taking Al-Qahtani to win this fight. Like, I'm going to take this one by first-round submission. He's going to be 6-1 going into this fight. You look at what he's done before. He picked up one in the PFL a couple months ago, actually 2 months ago, to the day of this fight that he's going to have against David Zelner. Against Lamar Brown, goes out there and chokes him out in the first round. Before that, a loss by split decision over in Brave CF, but then 4 straight wins in Brave before that. Al-Qahtani's a really good ground fighter. We saw that again in this first fight in the PFL, and he's taking on a guy here in David Zelner who's 4-2, who does have 2 wins by submission. But again, I'm just not sold on the guy. He's come off a loss in his last fight to a fighter who at the time was 4-4 in Combate. The guy's now 5-4. Again, these are fights similar to what Bellator does with their up-and-coming fighters. The PFL does the same exact thing. They build their guys up and they get them wins. It's what they've been doing with Elvin Espinoza. That's how they got him to the Keone Diggs fight. This is going to be all Abdullah Al-Qahtani in this fight. He's going to win this fight by first-round submission. Our next fight will come here in the women's featherweight division. Abby Montes is back. She's going to be taking on Michelle Montague, I believe. I'm not completely sure how to say her name. That's on me. I know she's fought twice in the PFL Challenger Series. I'll be honest with you, I did not watch those Challenger Series fights because again, she in her last fight beat a fighter who was 0-0 at the time. Like, what are we doing? I believe it's one of AJ McKee's fighters. If Tapology is showing me anything. Anyways, I'll be honest with you, I'm just not all that familiar with Michelle, but she is 3-0, 2-0 in the PFL Challenger Series, now getting a shot against Abby Montes, who is a fighter in Montes who has fought in the PFL before. She's 2-2. Her claim to fame is the win in her first PFL fight against Clarissa Shields, where she beat Shields by split decision. But then after that, dropped a fight to Elena Kolesnik when she fought in the season, and then again to Marina Mohatina, who are actually 2 fighters who made it to the playoffs this season at 145 pounds. And then most recently beat a fighter in Brandy Hester, who is 0-0. She beat her last on the PFL 4 fight card. Again, Abby Montes hasn't really beaten anybody that great at MMA specifically. I mean, again, Clarissa Shields is a boxer, and that's where she did get her best win. But again, most MMA fighters would beat Clarissa Shields because they can just grapple her. Obviously, stand-up wise and striking wise, they wouldn't beat Clarissa Shields. But again, on the ground, Shields is not, she's not an MMA fighter, at least not just yet. She hasn't really adapted with the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu. That's how Montes won. However, in this fight, I've got Michelle to win this fight. I think she's able to get it done by decision. I think Montes is competent enough on the ground to the point where she can get out of submissions. So I think that all playing a factor. I think Michelle's going to win this fight. I think she'll get it done by unanimous decision. Next up, we have got, it's going to be Mustafa Rashid Neda taking on Corey Kupp in this fight. Corey Kupp is 11-5, coming out of Michigan. I've seen the picks kind of split on this one because Corey Cup's a guy who's fought on the Challenger Series and the Contender Series before. On the Challenger Series, he lost to Carlos Leal, who again is in the playoffs. He's going to be fighting Sada Busi later on this card. And then on the Contender Series, lost to a pretty solid fighter in Michael Lombardo. Lombardo's a guy now fighting, obviously in Bellator, had a loss in his last fight to Levon Chokely, but a guy who is, again, pretty solid over there in Bellator. But Cup, again, has gotten shots in both the Contender Series and the Challenger Series. However, when you look at his wins outside of those fights, or just any of his fights outside of those fights, he's beating guys who are 4-5, 2-10, 13-18. The 6-3, 6-2 is the world, sure. But again, he's fighting in TWC, which is Total Warrior Combat. That's a promotion that Daquan Townsend's fought in most recently. I believe the Guitar Hero, Justin James, fought there as well. And again, he's beating guys who are just bad. And then he fought in Motor City Cage Fights. I don't really know anyone who's fought in that. So up in the Michigan area, again, up in the Great Lakes area, that's where Cup's going to fight. He's taking on a 7-3 Mustafa Rashid Neda here. For Neda, again, 3 straight wins. He's fought in Brave before. He's fought in UAE Warriors. I'm not overly impressed with him, I'll be honest with you, but what he does do, he comes out there, he blitzes his opponents. He looks for the kill. I think Neda is able to win this fight. I'm going to take him by first round knockout. Our next one, we will have Alexei. He is back yet again, 3-0 professionally. Again, keeps picking up wins in the PFL. You saw his last win, the submission move, the Darce choke in the first round. This is going to be more of the same. They are booking him against a guy here in Sean Stefanelli, who is 4-2 professionally, has not really beaten anybody, is coming off a win in Cage Wars against a guy who was making his professional debut. It's not that tough of a fight for Alexei at all. Again, this is what they did to Elvin Espinosa, and this is what they're doing with some of the guys that they really like out the Challenger Series. They give them low-level opponents. It's that simple. That's what the PFL does. Alexei's going to win this fight. He's going to go right through Sean Stefanelli. Again, it's not a competitive fight in the slightest. Again, what Alexei's going to do, he's going to go in there. He goes in there and takes down his opponents, looking for submissions. We have seen him challenged before, not in his last PFL fight, but the fight before. Went to a split decision, ended up picking up the win. He's going to remain undefeated. He's going to win this fight. I like Alexei to take this one by unanimous decision, by first round submission. Again, it's not going to be a contest. Next up, obviously, Baggio Ali Walsh is back. Again, still an amateur fighter. If you're not familiar with Baggio Ali Walsh, he is the grandson of Muhammad Ali. That's why the PFL has him, and that's why they are booking amateur fights on their program on ESPN. Again, he's taken on a bad fighter. Ed Davis is 2-1 as an amateur, lost his last amateur fight. I don't know why Baggio. Okay, I do know why Ali Walsh is not a pro yet, because again, they are taking their time with him, like they're doing with Alexei. But man, it's just like, Baggio Ali Walsh got signed to the PFL after fighting 2 fights outside the PFL. He's beaten Tom Gracer, who was 1-3. He beat Isaiah Figueroa, who was 1-1, and then he beat Travel Miller in his last fight. He's won by knockout in the first round every single time. This fight is not going to change anything. He's going to win by first round knockout again. The one time he did lose, though, was in Fusion Fight League in 2022 when Devin Rothwell took his back and submitted him in the second round. Again, amateur MMA, let's be honest, it doesn't really matter. I think that's a point that Daniel Cormier makes a lot about amateur MMA is that, and I think Dominic Cruz and Paul Felder, stress this a lot too in the broadcast, especially. It's not a bad thing to get amateur fights in, because again, they don't matter on your record. Really, the only thing that hurts you with amateur MMA is the damage you can take in amateur MMA, where you're really not, because you're not getting paid in amateur MMA. So that's really the difference. Is that you're not getting paid, but it's really just about experience to the point where then you are going to become a professional MMA fighter, where you are going to hopefully be making more than a 12-12 contract that the UFC is going to give you, obviously, right? But I think obviously this fight is not competitive. I want to see Ali Walsh make the jump to professional MMA, because again, CM Punk has fought professional MMA before. Jake Paul is going to fight professional MMA in his next fight, or his first fight in the PFL. Again, there are fights for him against bad fighters that they could book him against, but they're not doing it yet. They're keeping him in the amateur ranks. It's fine. They don't have to pay him, I do believe. He's going to win this fight. He's going to get it done by first round TKO, like all of his other fights. Now, on to the big fights. We got through those pretty quickly in about 9 minutes. That's good. On to the big fights now, though, on this PFL card, starting with the first playoff fight here in the welterweight division. We have got Magomedkerimov taking on Solomon Renfro. So if you're not familiar with Solomon Renfro, this is a guy who fought on the Contender Series before. He got a shot against Johnny Parsons. He lost it by split decision. He went back to LFA, lost to Adam Fugit, won 2 fights. The PFL picked him up. He went on and fought Dra Hussein Al-Sawali in his last fight. For Al-Sawali, this is a guy who was supposed to fight Cedric Diom in his last fight. Obviously, fight fell through, so instead Renfro gets Al-Sawali instead. He beats Al-Sawali by second round knockout. Now, again, he is not booked in the playoffs because he only had 5 points, but Magomedkerimov, who I'm going to pull up the standings right now, I believe had 11. I think everyone really in each weight class had in the welterweight division, all the playoff fighters had, pretty good amount they all had a pretty good amount of points already booked, or already there. I believe Umlatov had 11, if I'm not mistaken. No, he had 8 because he beat Naib Lopez by unanimous decision. Naib Lopez stuck in there for a longer, amount of time than we thought he was going to. But again, Renfro came into that fight knowing that he was not going to make the playoffs because Naib Lopez already had points, I do believe, right? I think Lopez beats, who did he beat? He beat Shane Mitchell, right? So it was either Naib Lopez wins and he advances to the playoffs, or Umlatov wins and he advances to the playoffs. Like, there was no possible way for Renfro to make the playoffs unless, I think, Sadibou C was to lose. Obviously, C didn't lose. So Renfro, you assumed, was out, but now he's back because Magomed Umlatov, who is, by the way, still undefeated, he is 14-0, cannot show up to fight Magomedkerimov in a fight that, again, was going to be really great. Instead, Magomedkerimov gets Solomon Renfro. Now, again, it feels like Magomedkerimov, it's tough to say fast, but it is. That's what it is. It feels like Magomedkerimov has been, kind of the uncrowned champion. I know last year he just did not get the chance in the playoffs because he was booked, because he didn't fight his first fight against Zeffirino. He had visa issues. He beat Delano Taylor, but then he doesn't have enough points to make the playoffs. So then instead they just book him on the final card. He beats Gleibson Tebow by unanimous decision. It is what it is, right? So again, Magomedkerimov's not able to compete in the playoffs. Instead, we had a final fight of, get this, Delano Taylor and Sadibou C. And now, obviously, Sadibou C has kind of progressed himself into a real playoff fighter for the PFL, but still, it just feels weird because Sadibou C has been here since 2018, and it's a guy who was like sometime make the playoffs but lose fights, and now Sadibou C is, we're going to talk about him later, or the next fight, he's kind of like just a knockout artist for the PFL, which is cool. But it's just different because I've seen Sadibou C point fight for a lot of his career. However, again, Magomedkerimov beats Delano Taylor, beats Gleibson Tebow, now comes back into 2023, wins his first fight by knockout in the first round, and then beats David Zawada in the first round. It is what he's supposed to do against those guys. Again, for Solomon Renfro, 1 fight, 1 win. The win over Al-Sawali by second round knockout. Now he puts himself in the playoffs. He's going to be the 5 seed coming in against. Obviously, he's just a replacement fighter, but he's going to be the 5 seed taking on the 1 seed of Magomedkerimov, the 2-3s, Leal, and C, obviously. Obviously, Magomedkerimov is going to win this fight. I think everyone thinks he's going to win this fight. I think Solomon Renfro is going to have a chance. He's going to have to get really lucky. He's going to have to land a big bomb and put down Magomedkerimov and basically just put him to sleep. It's not going to happen, though. Magomedkerimov is that good of a striker. Again, he has been dropped before. If you go back to his championship fight in 2021 against Ray Cooper III, we've seen him get knocked out before in big moments, but that's really his only loss in the PFL. Magomedkerimov, you can make the case, is the best PFL fighter of all time. 14-1. I mean, it's crazy. The championship in 2018, no championship in 2019. But you can probably make the case he's the best PFL fighter of all time. If he can go out there and win another championship this season, I think then you will finally establish himself maybe as the best PFL fighter of all time. So I'm taking Magomedkerimov to win this fight. I don't think Renfro has the skills and the tools to beat him. I think this is going to be all Magomedkerimov. I think he's a way better striker. Renfro, we have seen knocked out before against Adam Fugit. If Adam Fugit can knock him out, who, by the way, Renfro is a minus 450 favorite in that fight. If Adam Fugit is able to knock him out, what is Magomedkerimov going to do? And oh, by the way, Magomedkerimov can grapple as well if he needs to. Renfro's been submitted before as well. Against Mike Malott, another UFC guy. It feels like a tough fight. Magomedkerimov is going to go right through him. Give me Magomedkerimov to win this fight by first round TKO. On to our next playoff fight here in the welterweight division. We have got the reigning champion in Sadibou C. He'll be taking on Carlos Leal. This is, of course, a rematch of last year's playoff card, where in the semifinals, again, I'll tell you the paths for both these guys in 2022, both of their best seasons in the PFL. Sadibou C comes in there, wins his first fight by split decision, then beats Rory McDonald in the main event by unanimous decision, then goes out there and gets Carlos Leal, beats him by decision, and then goes on and beats Delano Taylor in a 5-round main event by unanimous decision as well. So he wins 4 decisions to become the PFL champion. And the year before, of course, he got beat by Magomedkerimov in the playoffs. And now here he is. Sadibou C is a world champion. But since then, in 2023, he has gone out there and he has gotten finishes. Sadibou C has knocked out Al-Sawali in the second round with the big knee and spinning wheel kicked Shane Mitchell in his last fight to make the playoffs. Sadibou C said at the beginning of the season, he's not waiting around anymore. He's going out there and he is going out to get finishes. And again, it has resulted in 2 knockout finishes. The guy, honestly, it was his first finishes since 2019. Because 2019, he picked up a win by body kick TKO in the first round. But Sadibou C's going out there, he's getting finishes, and he's a fun fighter to watch. Sadibou C, let's be honest, would kind of point fight before. He still kind of does that, but I feel like he's just gotten his power, and he's really striking with more aggression, and Sadibou C is a fun fighter to watch now, more than he was before. Obviously, the fight against Delano Taylor for the World Championship was not very entertaining. But Sadabusi gets the rematch against Carlos Leal. Leal is a guy who, again, fought twice in the Challenger Series in 2022, wins both those fights, then upsets Ray Cooper III and beats him by unanimous decision. Is booked against Nikolai Alexashin. Nikolai drops out of the fight, so Leal gets his points, goes to the playoffs, loses to Sadabusi, comes back in 2023 though, knocks out David Zawada in the first round, then knocks out Delano Taylor in the second round. It feels like Delano Taylor's chin's kind of gone at this point of his career, to be honest. And I know Delano Taylor is new to the PFL. This is only his second year in the PFL. The guy's 26, but he's been knocked out 3 times in the last, year? It just, again, he needs some time to refresh. I honestly don't think the PFL is going to give him another shot next year. So unless they go to 16, then maybe they will. But I feel like he'll be a guy who will probably stay in the PFL system, but will probably be like a guy who's not in the actual season, considering I think the PFL is going to be buying Bellator after Bellator goes to San Diego with their 4 championship fight card. However, that's we're not talking about Delano Taylor. Sadabusi and Leal have both fought Taylor. They have both beat Taylor. I think Sadabusi goes out there and wins this fight. What has changed since the first Leal and Sadabusi fight? Honestly, really nothing much. Both those guys have been getting finishes since then, which is great. But they've also been fighting bad competition. Delano Taylor, David Zawada, and then for C, you've got Shane Mitchell and also Wally. Those guys, again, C and Leal are supposed to go right through those guys, and they're supposed to go out there and get finishes. The one thing that I think has changed, though, is Sadabusi's aggression and his power. I think Sadabusi's really sitting back on his punches, and I think Sadabusi's really sitting back on his kicks as well. He's using all of his skills. He's a dangerous man. He is a dangerous guy. Sadabusi's going to go out there and he's going to pick up the victory. He's going to advance to the championship, and he is going to get his rematch against Magomedkerimov. We'll see how that goes, but I think it's going to be seeing Magomedkerimov in the main event, or not the main event, but in the championship fight. The main event will likely go to, of course, this weight class in the lightweight division. I think they're going to main event whatever the championship card is. It just feels like these are the biggest names. Oliver Aubin-Mercier in this first fight, who's the reigning champion, but not in the main event. He'll be taking on Bruno Miranda. Miranda coming off of 2 straight wins in 2023 the PFL. He's put himself in an excellent position here with 6 points. After wins over Ahmed Amir and then Alex Martinez, the Martinez fight being a win by split decision, he has put himself again in the postseason. He is going to be the 4 seed. I think he's the 4 seed. No, he's the 3 seed. Yeah, Burgos is the 4. I forgot about that. It was supposed to be. And we'll talk about the controversy around Natan Schultz being in that spot. But again, Bruno Miranda makes his way into the PFL playoffs. He's going to be taking on, though, the toughest guy in this weight class. Again, you've seen what Oliver Aubin-Mercier has been able to do so far. This guy, again, is the best fighter, I think, in the PFL. I don't see it at any point where this guy's going to lose in the PFL, really. No matter who he gets in the finals. Is it Burgos as a caller? I'll give you my pick later. I think Mercier runs through both those guys. I think by the end of this year, Oliver Aubin-Mercier is going to be 10-0 in the PFL with back-to-back world championships and looking for a 3rd next season. Now, obviously, there's going to be tougher guys that Bellator is going to be bringing in. I mean, hell, we're going to have the AJ McKees of the world. We'll have, Tafik Musayev, Alexander Chablis. We'll have Patricky Pitbull, maybe Patricio Pitbull. There's going to be tougher fighters. Don't get me wrong. There will be tougher fighters for Oliver Aubin-Mercier next season, assuming the PFL drowns out Bellator. But for now, again, there's nobody really right now that can touch him. I know Shane Burgos is probably the toughest to that, and I think Shane Burgos will give him a fight if he can beat Clay Collard, and I think Clay Collard will give Aubin-Mercier a fight. But again, that's how good Aubin-Mercier is. Is he the most fan-friendly style of fighter? No, he's not. He's not going to produce you those all-out wars like Justin Gaethje did for World Series of Fighting. He's not. He's not going to be the face of the PFL because he's not, A, that marketable, and B, because he doesn't put on amazing finishes. Let's just be honest. That's how OAM fights, though. But OAM is a really good fighter. Again, from fighting out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, he is really something about those French Canadians. They are good at mixed martial arts. And I think Oliver Aubin-Mercier, it's not going to be a fight between him and Miranda. He's going to go out there and he is going to outpoint Miranda. Miranda's best, the thing that he can danger OAM the most with is going to be his striking. It's going to be the power out of Miranda. But again, OAM doesn't really get hit. Since, again, coming into the PFL, he has not been challenged. His losses in the UFC were tough fights. Alexander Hernandez, Gilbert Burns, and Arman Tsarukyan. And they cut him after that. He's really good. Trust me. OAM is that good. He's going to win this fight by decision. He'll take this fight down if he needs to. He's just going to hold Miranda there, and he's going to keep him there. It's not going to be that fun to watch, but it's going to be crowd pleasing. It's not going to be crowd pleasing, but it's going to be, it's easy money on OAM this weekend or this Wednesday. What are we doing? Anyways, main event time, Clay Collard, Shane Burgos. Now, okay, I'll just tell you the pick right away. I'm taking Shane Burgos by decision. I don't think Clay Collard's able to deal with the wrestling. I don't think he's able to. I know Clay Collard has been better throughout, he's been good with his defensive wrestling, but again, Shane Burgos has come into the PFL and he has become a boring wrestler, which sucks, but that's kind of what he does now. And I know it's only been 2 fights, but he really didn't show that much aggression in the OIM fight, and then the Yamato Nishikawa fight, he goes in there and just holds him down for 15 minutes. Like, I'll be honest with you, I was at a San Diego Padres game when that fight was on, but like, I remember, like, I was there watching, because Burgos, I've always been a Burgos fan, but like, I'm sitting there watching Burgos just wrestle this guy when he needs points to make the playoffs, and he's just wrestling this guy. I know once he got out of the first round, he really couldn't get in the playoffs anyway. Maybe he knew at the time Natan Schultz and Hoosh Manfio were going to get DQ'd from the PFL season, but man, oh man, and let's talk about that right now. So originally, Shane Burgos, again, was not supposed to be in this fight. Shane Burgos is the 4 seed technically because they DQ'd Natan Schultz and Hoosh Manfio after their sparring match, on the fight card, on the second fight for the lightweights. Now, okay, I'm not against that. I think that's a good thing the PFL is doing. They're making these guys fight. However, and I get it because they're trying to, they're making an example out of Manfio and Collard because, there's 2 guys in the same weight class who don't want to fight because they're training, they're buddies. I believe they're like really close. Like, I believe, like, what was it? I think Hoosh Manfio's Natan Schultz's like daughter's godfather. I think it's crazy. It might be the other way around. But those guys are really close and they're training partners and they're really good friends. And the PFL, I think, made an example out of them that, okay, well, like, there's no friends in this. Obviously, the PFL makes the fights. They don't randomize it. They make them themselves. And that's why you get guys like Shane Burgos against Nishikawa because they want Burgos to pick up points. That's why when Anthony Pettis was fighting, they gave Anthony Pettis the Miles Price, the Irish guy, last season. Like, they're looking for their big stars to pick up wins and knockouts early, and that's why in the first, and also when they start the season, that's why they give the big names each other. That's why OIM fights Shane Burgos at the beginning of the year, and they're hoping after that the loser can go out there and pick up 6 points. That's why Thiago Santos fought Rob Wilkinson early, because they were hoping Santos would bounce back and pick up 6 points. Obviously, both those guys got popped for steroids, and now you got Silveira and Impa Kasanganay in the main event, in the championship fight, which I'm excited for. But again, that's the PFL's doing, and the PFL did that for a reason. That's why they canned the Schultz-Manfio thing. I don't mind it. It just feels like they did this because Shane Burgos was up next. If Yamato Nishikawa beats Shane Burgos in that fight, you think the PFL's doing that for Yamato Nishikawa? You think they're really doing that? I don't think they are. I don't think they're replacing Hoosh Manfio with Nishikawa so Nishikawa can go fight Clay Collard again. They're not doing that. That's why it seems iffy, because they gave Shane Burgos, the guy they gave the most money to in this PFL off season. They gave him the playoff spot because, again, I don't disagree with them sending Natan Schultz out there, but it just feels that the timing's really bad. The timing's horrible because, again, I pose you the question: if that's Yamato Nishikawa, is Nishikawa in the playoffs right now? No, he's not. Nishikawa does not make the playoffs. But now when you look at this fight, especially, I think Shane Burgos beats Clay Collard. Clay Collard, again, because I think Burgos has him everywhere. I think he does. Yes, Clay Collard's a great boxer. Yes, he's gone out there and outboxed Anthony Pettis and Jeremy Stevens in that crazy fight in 2022. He's gone out this season and finished Stevie Ray and beaten Yamato Nishikawa as well. Sure, that's great and all. My thing is, Shane Burgos now has to thread the wrestling. He's going to be able to mix it up with Clay Collard. Collard is going to be concerned about the wrestling game of Shane Burgos, and Burgos is just going to have him on edge the entire fight. Pause, but he's going to, right? Like, it's just, I think Burgos is going to have him the entire fight. I think Burgos is going to be able to mix it up with his leg kicks. He's going to be able to mix it up with his striking, which I think we need to see more out of the striking game of Shane Burgos. He's going to have to go for it more on the feet. However, again, the wrestling's always going to be there. Burgos is going to mix it up with him on the ground. I think Burgos is going to be able to get him down, and I think when the fight's on the feet as well, I think Burgos will have a lot of moments of success because, again, Clay Collard is going to be worried about the wrestling. I think Shane Burgos wins. He gets it by decision. I think it will be a little bit more entertaining than his first 2 fights in the PFL. And Shane Burgos goes on, and he's going to fight Oliver Aubin-Mercier in a rematch, which will probably main event the championship card for the PFL because out of all the fights, it kind of has to. Larissa Pacheco and Marina Mohatina are not main eventing. You can make the case for Silveira Kasanganay. Jesus Pinedo, Gabriel Braga rematch is interesting, but again, they don't have a name. Goltsov, Hanan Ferreira is not main eventing. Sadabusi Magomedkerimov rematch, no. The money fight, no matter what, comes out the lightweight division. Clay Collard's a name that they have pushed before. He's beat Anthony Pettis and he's beat Jeremy Stevens. Shane Burgos is Shane Burgos. Oliver Aubin-Mercier is the champ and trying to defend it. Bruno Miranda is the one where it goes, but still, I think the only outcome that the PFL doesn't main event the lightweights is Collard versus Miranda, but I still think they might. But I think if that happens, then they probably shift to Kasanganay Silveira, I think, because people know who Impa is, unfortunately, because he got spinning back head kicked by Joaquin Buckley. I love Kasanganay, but that's kind of the reason why people know him. So I think that would be the fight that probably co-main events. And then they probably just throw in the heavyweight fight. No, Pinedo Braga, the heavyweight fight. The welterweights. See Magomedkerimov come main event too. I don't know. They're all decent fights. I think we know that Larissa Pacheco is going to beat Marina Mahatma now, but we'll save the rest of the picks for the actual championship fight card that comes up. And I think, I don't know, like 2 months. So that'll do it, folks. We've got Shane Burgos to win this fight by decision and move on to take on Oliver Aubin-Mercier in the final. So folks, thank you for watching. Make sure the subscribe button down below for more. Again, we'll be back for the PFL Championship card, which comes at you 2 or 3 months time. I might do PFL Europe, but probably not. And then Bellator staying on the channel. And then UFC, obviously, next week. We're going to be back for that card that is in Paris, France. Your main event, Cito Gan versus Sergey Spivak. So folks, thank you for watching. Make sure the subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.